one or more questions in exact details or statement so that the board op can post it up. That's really important because I screen all of those before they get on. No one gets on without being screened. And you have a lot of numbers of the things to talk about. We have the H1N1 flu that's now showing up not only in Montgomery County, Texas, but also showing now in Portland, Oregon. It's the H1N1 DMP09 strain, and it's killing people pretty quickly. Apparently, in Montgomery County, though, several of the people that died, they can't find the virus, so they think there may be another organism like mycobacteria. We have a so we have a situation where that's going on. Then, of course, we have Fukushima Daiichi, where we talked about this and got on E&E News yesterday with Chris Harris about the fuel rod assemblies by yesterday. They had pulled 88 of 1,533 bundles. Some of the last ones were bent like a banana, and we're pretty sure that the fuel rod assembly pellets came out and fell out into the pool itself. No evidence yet that the cooling pool seal is leaking, but it's only a matter of time. These structures are leaning. They have inclinometers on them. They're all going to fall into this mush. We call this oatmeal nuclear mush that they're creating with all the water around. And, of course, it's the rainy season there with snow and everything. So it's only a matter of time. We have a death spiral happening in the western Pacific Ocean with 3,000 nautical miles, almost 4,000 miles of the ocean's dead. And if you go 150 miles off the coast of California, 98% of the seafloor is covered with dead sea life. Most people don't realize they're already being poisoned today. So I tell people, don't freak out. Start taking NutriMeds. Get a radiation detector. Be aware when the radiation levels are higher. Start thinking of your home as a hazmat site. Start realizing you may need a shutter inside and filter your air and take specific nutraceuticals to protect yourself. So can you give us some updates on what's going on with the flu, the H7N9? We are now starting to quarantine people in China, the H1N1 flu, and others, because beta coronavirus is spreading. We're going to have 2014 is going to be quite a year. And, of course, the government is just seizing for a crisis so that they can bring in a bank holiday, a martial law, which I expect to happen at the very least, a bank holiday for 5 days to 2 weeks. I expect a devaluation of the currency. I expect Japan to collapse this next year, their economy, and a run on the bond market because of what the courts have been doing there. And, of course, we have continued weird activity on the sun, which Professor McKenney will update. So, and what's going on in Earth's changes and what's happening in these other areas.
Well, the situation in Houston, around Houston, is very dramatic, and they came into it after the fact. In other words, people had died before they got to the testing phase. They were just classifying them under ILI, which is influenza-like illness, and and if the test didn't work, then they just assumed that there was something else that caused a flu. And so people died without the particular virus being identified. They now have identified 2 people with the H1N1 PDM09 virus. And there's another case, yet another case, but now there are 15 cases. 6 died so far, and that means there's 8 critically ill. Yeah. This thing is spreading around Houston. It's in 3 counties now. And the transmission is.
It's up also in the area around Austin, Texas too.
Oh, it's down in Austin now too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, it's in Austin. It may well be this virus or others, but the report is in Austin that several individuals have died. Actually, I think Alex Jones's uncle, Rob Dew, has been sick, and I think it's probably this virus or.
Up until now, we have been.
Come back and we've got 3 areas to discuss. The first is, of course, the pandemic flu, the pandemic mycobacteria, pandemic beta coronavirus, H1N1, H5N1, H7N9, and there's also an H7N7 as well out there. I think that 2014 is going to be thought of as the year of the flu. And it's interesting that comets are often harbingers of major flu pandemics. There was a major cometary period of time right before the 1918 swine flu. And then I expect Fukushima Daiichi to get a heck of a lot worse than it is now. They're not going to be able to ignore it, despite the fact they put a cap on, and they called them enemies of the state to even ask questions about Fukushima. With the totalitarian state of Abe, which I'm calling for a revolution against this government, we need a call for it now, and Americans, we need to stand up and say, the Japanese people don't need to be victims of these fools. We need reality, and we need scientists to use their best brains to figure out a way to clear this and stop this problem, because whatever's happening in Japan now is going to hit the west coast of the United States. It's going to go over the entire United States. It's going to hit most of the northern hemisphere. And despite some of the scientists thinking that this is going to be restricted to the northern hemisphere, it won't peak as high, but it will eventually peak in the southern hemisphere. They'll receive a good dosage of radiation there, plus the danger of Chernobyl-type reactions and Fukushima-type reactions of other reactors all over the planet, especially if there's a war or terrorism. The primary target, if I was a terrorist, would be a nuclear power plant and its waste depot. So I think that we need to solve this problem, and Fukushima should be a wake-up call that old-style nuclear reactors need to be removed. And we need to start looking at other ways of generating energy, including tokamak fusion reactors, thorium, pebble bed reactors developed in South Africa, and other technologies such as Professor McCanney's energy from the torsion field, which is the, you want to call it the Higgs field, that actually generates and creates the gravitonic effects that create planets and stars. Those fields exist before the planets and stars even are formed. And there's really no limit on energy. It's like the Buckminster-Fullerite theory. You know, Buckminster Fuller talked about the tremendous intelligence of the universe, the tremendous energy of the universe. You know, and his genius actually explained what Professor McCanney is talking about, which is the completion of Nikola Tesla's work that basically shows that deficiencies are all created in the minds of the global maniacs that want to tell us that science can't solve these problems, including subatomic particle physics to alter the half-life of radioisotopes, or there's limited energy, or you have to always pollute when you create energy. So let's get into this stuff about the flu, because I think 2014, if people aren't taking our nutraceuticals, protecting themselves against radiation, having detectors, etc., they're going to be caught really in big trouble.
Well, that's right. We've had one flu that has come over from, that was in March of 2011, after the Fukushima accident, and it spread radiation around, mainly across the top of the country and into the northeast and the bottom part of Canada. Some of it did go down the coast, though, and the French in particular have been very good about monitoring that and showing the trail of the plume that came across from the jet stream. It only took that plume to come across, it only took like 3 to 5 days for radiation to reach the west coast of the United States from Japan.
Are you talking about the French? You mean you're talking about the French in France, you mean? They're monitoring it too?
It was a French company, yeah, or the French government sent over, you know, they've got all these nuclear reactors, and they were interested, so they looked at the data, and they collected data, and they said, hey, you've got serious contamination problems all along the west coast and then across the bottom part of Canada. Yeah, there's pictures of it. Okay, then, and then now we have radioactive debris that's washing up on the northern shores of California and the shores of Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. And in some cases it is radioactive, and I hope the people that are dealing with it, the federal government said, no, we're not going to help.
Well, they're actually going to be forced to know that the city of Berkeley, which is the University of Berkeley, where the Department of Engineering Physics is actually, was monitoring for a year and a half, and they stopped, by the way, after I contacted their director and said, well, we need more information directly because they're doing a really good job of reporting water and food. Somebody must have threatened them, most likely from government or corporations or the nuclear industry. But the city of Berkeley is now going to push the state in to have their own private health officers and do testing. So, Berkeley, California.
Yeah, I just saw that they passed it through the city council. And that makes a lot of sense. You know, if the federal government isn't going to step up and the state government is going to step up and the county government's not going to step up, then you have to step up as a city. And, of course, they're particularly vulnerable because they are a tourist attraction and a university, internationally known university. So they're particularly vulnerable because people aren't going to want to go where there's radiation. They have to say, hey, we're measuring it. We're active here.
What do you think of these different flus? Because we're now, you can now count on one hand all the major flu strains that are all now spreading very fast, and some of them are getting quite lethal. This H1N1 DPM 09 is infecting and killing people pretty quickly, and it has the characteristics that if it, in the next, say, 6 weeks or 8 weeks, if it continues its current pace, it's going to become a pandemic flu. It'll first be epidemic and then pandemic.
Apparently, there were variants, they call it variants of the influenza virus, the H1N1 PDM09, and they were detected in Taiwan between 2012 and 2013. So, and what they said was that because of these variants that are seen in this, and also in the H3N2 virus, that you're not going to be able to identify them with your testing. And that's what happened in around Houston.
I bet if they did clade analysis, they'd find the strains were the same ones as Taiwan, or very similar, because most people don't realize that the long flights, say the Dreamliner and the major trans-Pacific flights, starts in Taiwan and goes to Houston, Texas. Its primary airports are LA and Houston. So it's not surprising that it emerged in Houston.
Okay. And so they knew about this early in 2013, but they didn't update their testing. So in other words, you know, so they're still trying to detect it with testing that they know won't detect it. Oh, come on, guys, give me a break.
Yeah, it's being well. This is not acceptable incompetence. What's also happening in terms of earthquake, volcanoes, and unusual weather, because we're seeing weird, basically not normal weather patterns, highs and lows. We know that the plasma physics, Professor McKinney talked about the weather is caused by plasma physics, and he mentioned a few unusual M-class CMEs, but they created a lot of ultraviolet light. As we'll get Professor McKinney's analysis of that, but I'm very suspicious that it was the plasma discharge, not the UV light, that triggered off these weird weather storms.
It wouldn't surprise me. There's been this will be the third extremely strong, extreme ultraviolet flash that came out of a flare. The first one affected the Haiyan tornado, not tornado, typhoon.
The Haiyan cyclone, yeah. Typhoon, Haiyan typhoon.
Yeah, over that hit into Indonesia, into the Philippines. The second one created cyclone Cleopatra in the Mediterranean Sea. In the Mediterranean Sea, we had a cyclone.
That's
the
weird.
third one just hit 2 days ago, and we're expecting wild weather.
We'll hear more from Professor McKinney when we come back. Or if you're an expert in what we call near-Earth space weather connects directly to our weather. In fact, our weather is just an expression of the plasma physics of space weather. The transfer of plasma that occurs with an MRX class solar flare, and you mentioned before the break, Ann, about the UV light striking the eastern Mediterranean around the area that created this cyclone Cleopatra that smashed into Sardinia. Professor McKinney, what are the best websites and what's the best explanation of what's going on? Because I think extreme weather is just going to be the average nowadays. We don't have the normal solar heating by more sunspots. We have plasma physics causing extreme weather. It's very unpredictable. We see, for example, we talked about this last night, that there's a giant wall that I think is artificially created that prevented the wall of the cyclone that arrived around from South China Sea that would have brought a lot of radioactive isotopes from near Kamchatka and Japan all the way to North America. It hit that wall and dissipated north and south and never hit the coast of California. So I think there's some weather modification going on, weather warfare. 5 nations have weather modification technology, America and Russia being the most advanced, France, Britain, and I believe there's another nation, China. And the situation on the eastern Mediterranean is a good example to explain your physics, which is verifiable, and you can actually, as an armchair astronomer and weather person, you could actually start to kind of say, oh, this is what I could see, this is what's likely happening because of the plasma physics of MRX class flares, and the plasma physics is what drives weather.
Yeah, 60 degrees. If you were off to the side of that or off to any point in space looking at the sun, you would also see that the blast equally strong. In other words, it's not like a laser beam. But what's coming out with that is a beam of charged particles, protons primarily, probably at relativistic speed. So they're hitting about the same time as the light gets to us. And in this particular case, my estimate of what happened is the blast actually went by Earth, and as Earth then moves into that streamer, we discharge it, and that's where the activity comes from to power these storms. And there's always the possibility in something like this, too, that we could have a little help from our friends, like you say, with weather control. And why this, it's hard without real data to point the finger at either natural causes or artificial causes. But remember that in an artificial weather control scenario, that all they're doing is providing a trigger mechanism for energy that's already there. They're not creating the energy for the storm system.
Exactly. In other words, in other words, the energy is already there. They create basically a electromagnetic rail, if you want to call it, for the energy to be concentrated in storm cells. Is that right?
That's exactly correct. And they do that. The current best way to do that is with lasers, where you ionize the air path. That gives a good conduction path, and therefore you basically, like I say, it's a trigger mechanism to release the energy from the ionosphere that's already there.
Right.
And that's the same mechanism that happens naturally when a cloud system forms above a storm system. It's like an electrical finger pointing up in space, and that is where the electrical discharge begins. And once that discharge begins, it wants to flow. We have enormous amount of electrical energy, pent-up capacitance, like a battery in the upper ionosphere. And so this all starts to flow down that one tube. And so, in other words, powering these cyclonic storms. But that's my estimate of what happened. And you're asking, where could an amateur see the activity? And basically, if you look for the infrared satellite data, or the what's known as radar. I'm not talking about the ground-based Doppler. I'm talking about the satellite radar, which identifies water and temperature. And so what you look for is the concentration of water. I just went through this on a recent show where, for example, we have tremendous water systems developing in the middle of the United States. And typically the water in storm systems comes off the Pacific Ocean or the Gulf, swoops up over land, and we can see that water moving in the radar, the satellite radar, and in the infrared. So we can see that water moving in. Then the cloud systems form due to the vertical electric field, and the storm systems develop. But sometimes there is no water movement in from the Gulf or the Pacific, and all of a sudden we've got 11 inches of rain falling in the middle of a city someplace or out in the country. And the question is, well, where did that water come from? It came from outer space because we connected into a vein of water, basically, and Earth is acting as a comet, drawing in the Earth's upper atmosphere is charging. And if you wanted to imagine a picture, I actually have a picture of this in my weather book, but you could imagine a leech connected to the side of a fish. And that's kind of what it looks like in outer space. It's connected, it's a plasma, influx of plasma that's coming in from outer space, connects to the upper atmosphere, and these have been measured for decades. We have had pictures of these in the ultraviolet coming into the atmosphere for decades where they see the water coming in. And along with that is the electrical discharge, and that goes all the way down to ground through the storm system. So that's kind of a back of the envelope quick explanation of the order of the process. But basically, none of this would happen. In fact, we wouldn't even have clouds if it were not for the solar electric field that we live in.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It also means that solar sunspot activity and UV light don't drive weather. It's the plasma discharges that steer the storms. What I've been told, and you can corroborate this or modify it, is that when they set up the storm cells that pulled in informed Katrina, or the Sandy winter storm that caused destruction up around New York, New Jersey, what they did is set up what's called a upper atmosphere torsion field that pulled in the storm cells over a period of days to create this giant vortex. And when enough storm cells pulled in, they actually created the storm, and they could steer it around like a joystick. So they can put relatively minimal energy in there. They actually, in a sense, steer the storm cells to create a weather pattern, if you want to call it.
Yeah, well, just imagine this. They're in the North Atlantic, like in the case with Sandy, or another wonderful case is what they call the perfect storm. That was in 1991, the fall of 1991. 3 overland hurricanes formed eventually out in the North Atlantic to form one superstorm where the eyes met and joined together. Or in the case of Sandy, which was definitely a manipulated storm. But basically, yeah, once the storm forms, then the standard story of meteorology is that the hurricanes are formed over warm water. Well, there's no warm water in October in the North Atlantic.
Right.
You know, it's so absurd. It's beyond absurd. But clearly they know how to manipulate storms. And I actually made a measurement one time. I was in a flight over the Pacific Ocean, and I was able to take photographs of the laser pulsing. And
the laser pulsing,
webpage.
You're talking about the laser pulsating, they heat up the upper atmosphere and start steering the storm cells.
Yeah, and what it does is it ionizes an air path, and an ionized air path, as you may well imagine, is a good conductor. The standard atmosphere is a dielectric, and it's a very good insulator electrically. And that's why we don't have current flowing down. That's what harbors all that energy, that electrical energy, up in the upper atmosphere. But when the path is broken, and this is what Tesla was doing, so let's talk about that a little bit too. What Tesla was doing with his Tesla tower was drilling through the dielectric of the atmosphere to then drain the energy down to his tower to collect it and distribute it for free.
Wow. Back in the moment. It's publicly put out as particularly incorrect. You have an interesting story we'll hear later about one of your friends that actually did some things about posting some information and saw that the government even can target what they want to post on his screen. What this means that you're describing is there really is no limit for energy, which is the primary, if you want to call it, currency of the planet. It's not gold or silver, which is the best second substitute. It's certainly not electronic currency or Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is the biggest, what I call, scamtastic scheme. If you want to invent something that's very nasty, it would be Bitcoin. The next is, of course, the current system, which is based on funny money printed out of thin air, and the biometric currency that's talked about in the Bible called the biometric mark of the beast. The best currency in the world is one where basically everybody can get access to free energy, that it's available and you can store it, and you can utilize it to create goods, to create food, and not to have pollution. It would change the whole world. It would be a complete change because we now have what we call relatively free information, which is going to continue to exponentially increase. And the culture is already eroding the differences between different cultures, labels like communist Chinese, Western countries, socialist, capitalist. And a lot of people are, right now we have the birth pangs, I call it the egg tooth of the little chick inside the shell of our current cultures all around the planet, poking through and saying it's time to break out of the shell, and for human beings to have new levels of technology that'll release us to use our imagination, to not have a polluted world, to have life extension technology, to not have strong independent nations rather than a globalist bunch of control freaks that ball off Tier 1 science and from Tier 2, and also to have us as a planet start to work together as nations to protect our planet from near space objects and space weather that can be very dangerous. But we don't see, at least publicly, any moves. If there is anything behind the scenes, it's completely walled off. And during Obama's administration, they basically made NASA go complete black op. To me, that's very disgusting. And Obama has nothing.
We have the ability and knowledge to grab that energy, and there's enormous amounts of energy. There's enough energy in a hurricane to power our country for a year.
Well, in fact, the very systems that they have developed to weaponize the planet and the weather, I'd say weaponize Earth, are the very systems that uses Tesla's real secret weapons, his real discoveries, which you talk about and explain like no one else. You're the originator of all this. That explains, in fact, what Tesla really developed. And the government weaponized it rather than making energy available to people. They have toxic nuclear reactors, the use of what they call fossil fuels, and there's no such thing as fossil fuels. They're abiotic fuels that come from deep into the earth because it's a nuclear reactor. And basically oil, all petrochemical products have some levels of heavy metals and radioisotopes. That's why off the coast of New Orleans, Alabama, they had tar balls that were full of thorium, strontium, uranium, etc. They're radioactive. And people don't want to believe that. It's too bad. It's just the facts. It's scientific facts. It's not open for dispute. And what you're doing here is you're offering an option that no one else on Earth has offered, that literally says they've walled off science and it's killing people and killing the planet.
Absolutely. I wanted to add to Ann's comments there with you and yours about the pollution of the Pacific Ocean. The food chain cycle, and this happens, a good example is mercury. The fish that are larger have higher concentrations of mercury, and it's disproportionate, it's exponential with their size. And so what's happening in the Pacific Ocean is that the plankton filters the water like once a week. The plankton of the Pacific Ocean filters the water. All of that radioactivity is going into plankton, and then it's consumed all the way up the food chain up to the largest mammals with the whales. And so what we're going to have is all of the animals. I saw a study done by the the Styx Oceanographic Institute in California, which is a big government misinformation engine, and they said, oh, there's no problem, it'll just dissipate in the ocean. Well, it completely ignores the fact that there's a food chain out there which is starting with the plankton, filtering that water on a constant basis and driving it into the life out there. All of the food chain lives in a sense off that plankton. It's the base of the food chain, so all of the life in the Pacific Ocean is going to be irradiated and killed off in the near future. And we're not seeing that. There's no studies being done. And we have the top institutes.
We have some reports from people that sail typically from Okinawa and from Japan all the way to San Francisco. We reported this on rents. We have reports also of people that have actually been going down and diving 150 miles off the California coast, and they're seeing 98% of the seafloor covered by dead animals. There's a lot of really bad things going to happen. And when this major plume of radiation strikes us with strontium and cesium, you're going to see a massive die-off of these organisms, and of course it's part of what I call the lungs of the planet. The 80% of the oxygen in the world is created by the upper 30 feet or 10 meters of the ocean surface. The skin of the ocean actually creates most of the oxygen on Earth by converting carbon dioxide to the phytoplankton, which means we're going to get a case of chronic lung disease as a planet. Every time you turn your car on, your SUV or your vehicle, even if it's a hybrid, you're burning the byproduct of phytoplankton. And once there's not enough phytoplankton, the human beings on the planet may require oxygen concentrators, not just like if they have COPD, but in their home, to have adequate levels of oxygen in their workplace or their building. So the future of possible dome cities, if we don't smarten up, is very real by the later parts of this 20th century if we don't stop doing what we're doing.
Yeah, nuclear disaster was imminent. It was inevitable. And now it's happened. Chernobyl was bad, but the Japanese radiation situation is horrific, and it's not going to end. It's just beginning. We're just seeing the beginning of it.
I'm going to ask you a subatomic particle physics question. I've heard from some reports from various, there's some scientists that say that you could use specific types of harmonic radiation, like Tesla talked about with Madame Curie over 80 years ago, and you could actually change the T1 half of radioisotopes and actually cleanse the water using broadcasting of the subatomic harmonic physics frequencies.
The food chain cycle, and this happens, a good example is mercury. The fish that are larger have higher concentrations of mercury, and it's disproportionate, it's exponential with their size. And so what's happening in the Pacific Ocean is that the plankton filters the water like once a week. The plankton of the Pacific Ocean filters the water. All of that radioactivity is going into plankton, and then it's consumed all the way up the food chain up to the largest mammals with the whales. And so what we're going to have is all of the animals. I saw a study done by the the SPIX Oceanographic Institute in California, which is a big government misinformation engine, and they said, oh, there's no problem, it'll just dissipate in the ocean. Well, it completely ignores the fact that there's a food chain out there, which is starting with the plankton, filtering that water on a constant basis and driving it into the life out there. All of the food chain lives in a sense off that plankton. It's the base of the food chain, so all of the life in the Pacific Ocean is going to be irradiated and killed off in the near future. And we're not seeing that. There's no studies being done. And we have the top institutes.
We have some reports from people that sail typically from Okinawa and from Japan all the way to San Francisco. We reported this on rents. We have reports also of people that have actually been going down and diving 150 miles off the California coast, and they're seeing 98% of the seafloor covered by dead animals. There's a lot of really bad things going to happen, and when this major plume of radiation strikes us with strontium and cesium, you're going to see a massive die-off of these organisms, and of course it's part of what I call the lungs of the planet. The 80% of the oxygen in the world is created by the upper 30 feet or 10 meters of the ocean surface. The skin of the ocean actually creates most of the oxygen on Earth by converting carbon dioxide to the phytoplankton, which means we're going to get a case of chronic lung disease as a planet. Every time you turn your car on, your SUV or your vehicle, even if it's a hybrid, you're burning the byproduct of phytoplankton. And once there's not enough phytoplankton, the human beings on the planet may require oxygen concentrators, not just like if they have COPD, but in their home, to have adequate levels of oxygen in their workplace or their building. So the future of possible dome cities, if we don't smarten up, is very real by the later parts of this 20th century if we don't stop doing what we're doing.
Yeah, nuclear disaster was imminent. It was inevitable. And now it's happened. Chernobyl was bad, but the Japanese radiation situation is horrific, and it's not going to end. It's just beginning. We're just seeing the beginning of it.
I'm going to ask a subatomic particle physics question. I've heard from some reports from various, there's some scientists that say that you could use specific types of harmonic radiation, like Tesla talked about with Madame Curie over 80 years ago, and you could actually change the T1 half of radioisotopes and actually cleanse the water using broadcasting of the subatomic harmonic physics frequencies, so you would literally split and create non-radioactive daughter molecules. Do you think that's theoretically possible based on Tesla's work and some of his statements over 80 years ago?
No, I think the damage is already done.
No, I'm talking about the existing molecules. In other words, if you got strontium-90, cesium-134, 137, could you clear the water by broadcasting a harmonic frequency that would split into non-radioactive daughters? Because that would be the ultimate way to cleanse it, not just filtering it and having the organisms die and fall in the bottom of the ocean and create a radioactive layer, but actually modifying the radioisotopes to make them non-radioactive daughters.
Yeah, but there again, how far is that going to penetrate into the water? No, my belief is that the damage is already done. It's already in the food chain, and it's already moving up the food chain. Yeah. It's already been filtered.
It's an open wound. In other words, if you had that technology, it's just using our imagination, you'd have to have it on continuously for centuries. Plus, you'd have to actually stop the original source. I used my imagination over the last few years trying to make some ideas as to what they could do. Firstly, they need to use radiation-proof robots with the ferromagnetic chip that Atmel makes, cable robots with depleted uranium cables or fiber optic cables to operate at a distance so they can get into these plants and start taking care of things. Turning the whole area into what I call a crystalline, fluorinated crystal sarcophagus rather than trying to remove these fuel rod assembly bundles, because I think they're likely, when they get more and more bent ones, they're going to cause a pyrophoric fire, or when the seal breaks on these cooling pools and they start to leak and then they go hot. And we have pretty good evidence now also that recently there's heavy isotopes showing up that there's been critical reactions deep in the ground in the aquarium because they have no idea where it is and they don't use ground-penetrating radar. So it's like the Keystone Cops, isn't it? It's pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. Chinese fire drill, not in practice.
Well, no, these are scary things, but we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I tell people Fukushima is survivable, but you need your NutriMeds. You need to have treat your home and your business as a hazmat site. You need to realize the airborne plagues are coming. You need to realize 2014 can be scary, but if you're prepared, it'll be fine. And the brilliance of Professor McCanney and Morrison, our team, trying to give you the best questions, to say we don't always give you the best, all the answers, but we help you ask much better questions. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, John and Professor McCanney. We will be back with a full show week after Christmas.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs
Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is December 22nd, 2013. Here are your news updates for today. The Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. Chaos. Severe and strange weather sweeps U.S., threatens holiday travelers. Government estimates 23,000 would be killed in 7 magnitude earthquake beneath Tokyo. Weather extremes. December snowfall breaks 112-year record in Calgary. Alright, moving on. Breaking news, breakingnews.com. Let's see what's going on here. Flood advisory for Maui until 5:45 p.m. coming out of KITV4. Central Park, New York City shatters December 22nd record high with 71 degrees. Old record 63 set in 1949 and 1998. Coming out of Breaking Weather. Toronto Hydro estimating restoration times of 72 hours for its customers, coming out of CP24. Huge rainfall estimates greater than 8 inches from north of Montgomery, Alabama to Sandy Springs, Georgia. Something crawled across my glasses. One person with life-threatening injuries after train accident in Charlotte, North Carolina. What's on my glasses? Ooh. Ant or something. Alright. Flood warning in effect for Clay, Cleburne, Randolph, and Tallapoosa counties in Alabama through 3 a.m. coming out of NWS Burlingame. Branford, Connecticut, firefighters using their fireboat to pump water to fight the Guilford fire. Coming out of Ryan Hannaran. Alrighty then. Extreme weather out there. Keep checking. If you're going to travel, please check the weather in your area. Ice storm, heavy rains hit Great Plains, Great Lakes, December 2013. Alright, moving on. E&E News. No, let's go to the Watchers watching the world. Here we go. The Watchers. Uptick in solar activity, SDO, HMI, AIA, Data Distribution Center under emergency repairs. Sudden increase in seismic activity at El Hierro, Canary Islands. Heads up. Unconditional basic income for all Europeans. Oh, I just saw something. What is going on? I don't want anything getting in my eyes. God, something just went across. What is going on? Is there something? Something came down on my glasses. Ran right across my lens. Alrighty. I don't know. Maybe the laptop attracts all kinds of heebie-jeeber bugaboos or something. That was weird. Maybe my glasses was sitting in some kind of little tiny sugar ant pile or something. I don't know. Alrighty then. Where, huh? All of a sudden something's like clawing across my glasses. I don't want it to get in my eyes. Alright, heads up. Extreme weather, that means the buggies are coming inside to get away from it. So heads up on that. Let's see. U.S. Canada. E&E News. Experts. Really an off year. Pelicans starving in Pacific Northwest since 2011. Killing baby birds for food. Breeding success really poor since 2011. I believe pelicans are responding to large-scale changes. Sardine crash persists in Pacific since decline in 2011. Also, 2 days ago, yesterday, unprecedented activity near Canada's west coast. Whales in record numbers displaying highly unusual behavior. Expert problems in Pacific could be bringing sea life to areas. Something's amiss out there. Also, government scientists concern Atlantic Ocean to be contaminated by Fukushima plume now in Pacific. Currents would carry it to U.S. East Coast. Wow. Heads up. Not safe in the East Coast either. It's going to go all the way around the world. So I guess sooner or later the global community will get involved when all the food runs out, right? Huh. Okay, let's move on. Japan Fukushima. What's going on here? Why is this? Wow, it's all the way down here. What's going on? Japan. Experts voice alarm over surge in cancers among young in Fukushima. Government told to implement measures now and be prepared for surge and increase further. Also today, Navy rescuer. Japan refused to let us in during 3/11 operation, said ship too radioactive. We were literally chased by a death sentence. Radiation was everywhere. Gunderson, like a horror movie where beast never gets killed. Worse yet to come for Pacific. You guys got to get away from the Pacific Ocean, alright? Well, I'm going to attach some comedy now that we heard the bad news. Thor News is finally up and running. Maybe I'll share that with you. I love his news. It just keeps going. But I love it. Alrighty then. Stay tuned. I'm going to try to lighten things up a little bit. Hope everybody is preparing for a very Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful Christmas. But then I'll see you again tomorrow, because the news just keeps coming. Also, who knows? Maybe something else will be signed. Why everyone's celebrating Christmas, who knows what they're going to try to put into law. Right? Wow. Think about it. Look what they put in the law. What was it? The NDAA? They did that on New Year's Eve? Heads up. Gotta keep an eye on these guys. See what they're up to. Why everyone's partying. Alright. Take care. Be prepared for anything. So, Christmas Eve on Tuesday. Make sure if you're working, everyone wear their uniforms. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of checkpoints out there. If you're working, wear a uniform. Also, if you're gonna go out and get drunk, party, whatever you're gonna do, and also for those who are throwing parties, please have slumber parties like in the old days. Everybody to spend the night. If you're gonna have a big party and people are drinking, let them spend the night. Alrighty then, just wait till daylight to leave and go home. Please be safe out there. And those who are throwing parties, please be prepared to let whoever you invite, no matter how many people it is, that they can stay. You can have a pajama party, a slumber party. You remember those days? You don't have to go out driving, trying to get home, and get arrested, and your whole life ruined, and car insurance, $1,300 ticket, and 502s, and DUIs. If you're gonna go party, stay at your friend's house. Alrighty then. If not, stay home. And you throw a party. Alrighty then. Here's some comedy to lighten things up. Because nothing's changing. It's you know, I'll try to find some good news out there. Well, there is good news. Jesus saves and Jesus loves you. So, just be prepared for anything, alright? And be prepared to party in place. That is the safest way to go. If you gotta go party, do it in your own house or wherever you're going. I want you to stay there. Alright? Doesn't matter. You gotta hire the babysitter, or you gotta bring the kid with you, or whatever. Or if there are no kids and it's just you, party in place. Bring the pets in, put newspaper down if you have to, walk the pets before you leave, make sure they know there's a secondary 24-hour toilet in an emergency in case mommy or daddy doesn't come back home that night, or to walk them, that they know it's okay, that they can, don't keep them in a cage. Worst off, you know, keep them in the bathroom if you don't keep them in a cage. You know, do you want to be in a cage? Oh, I caged my dog. What happens if something happens to you? Then they're stuck in a cage? What if you get in an accident, a car accident, then the dog's stuck in a cage till someone finds it? And I never understood why people would cage a cat. That's ridiculous. But alrighty then. Don't cage your pets. Just show them where the potty is and designate an area in your house. Or if you have a doggy door, fine. But I can't with this caging crap. Alright? Unless it's a giant cage, then that's okay. You know? A big giant kennel cage, maybe that's okay. But remember, something happens to you, then what happens to the pet that's stuck in the cage? Okay? So, just train them to go, if they have to emergency, go in the kitchen or wherever there's a floor and not carpet, and put something down with newspaper and something underneath the newspaper that's plastic, so that if it goes through, it just goes on the plastic. Alrighty then. Take care. Be prepared for anything and party in place. That's the motto for this 2013 Christmas and New Year's. You're going to party in place. You're not going to be out on the streets to be in a checkpoint and get arrested because you have a tail light out. Alright? Take care. I'll see you again tomorrow on the flip side. Stay tuned.
The Spanish word of the day is wheelchair. There's only one donut left, so wheelchair.
Jävlar! Nu går det undan! Fick du det på film? Oh my god! Oh my god, fick du det på film?
You don't wanna mess with me, man. I know Mexican judo. You don't know if I got a knife. You don't know if I got a gun. You don't know.
How to pronounce different objects.
워싱 머신으로 마이크로웨이브 찬 맥북으로 프로 페르르르르 우러시르르
Rudolph the red-nosed Rudolph.
Ah, look at that.
And she gon' shake it like a red nose.
Hi, I'm Barbie. Let's go for a ride. What the fuck kind of weather is this?
Whose shoes are these?
These are mine.
Whose bra is this?
I'm a secret.
Who is she?
That's my cousin.